So when I was a kid, I would have nightmares all of the time, and I mean every single night. From the ages of 7 to 10 or so, that's when they were the worst, and I cannot emphasize just how bad they were. I'd frequently have to be woken up as I'd be whimpering in my sleep or even occasionally yelling and screaming. The nightmares would vary sometimes, but for the longest time they were always centered around the house monster. The monster was nameless, shapeless, faceless. I did never really know what it looked like or what it was. Sometimes bipedal, other times not. It was always just the monster. You know that moment when you're dreaming and everything's fine, and all of a sudden you start to get this anxious feeling? You know that feeling you get when shit is about to go wrong? The feeling like something is watching you or someone is following you? That's the exact feeling I would get every time the monster would show up in my dream world. He would come and corrupt every dream I was in. This one particular dream turned a nightmare. I was sitting in class. It was a pretty typical scene. All the desks were aligned in a row in columns facing the front of the class. And then there it was, that anxious feeling, that nervous feeling that something wasn't right. I looked around the classroom, nothing wrong. And then I see he's in the very front of the classroom, seated at the desk, facing away from me. As soon as I realized this and saw him, his head snaps back and stares directly at me. I took off for the back door of the classroom, but he'd always bring me back to my house somehow. The door out of the back of the classroom somehow led directly into the front of my house. The door slammed and locked behind me. Suddenly, and as always, it's nighttime. It's completely dark, and not one person is in the house. I try to sneak upstairs to get to my room and into bed under the covers where I thought I would be safe. But as soon as I get halfway up the stairs, for some reason I turn around and I see he's crawling up the stairs after me. I start sprinting, but of course my legs slow down as if I'm running waist deep in mud. I scream and cry and try to get away, but finally, he got me. I woke up screaming as usual and went to my parents' bed and crawled between them. Mom, I just had the worst nightmare ever. As I'm about to explain to her what happened, she slowly starts to roll over, and then the monster whips around, grabbing me by the arms, shaking me. "I'm not your mommy," he hissed at me. It had begun to devour me. Feeling the blood run down my neck and my body going limp, I was finally able to wake up. Still feeling the blood dripping down my neck, it had turned to sweat. My sheets were soaked. I couldn't catch my breath. Sobbing, I sat in bed all night, awake, gripping my big stuffed teddy bear for dear life in the corner of my bed, too afraid to go see my parents. I've been having these dreams for 10 years now. I still see the monster every night when I go to bed. Recently, my wife and daughter and I moved into a new house. Well, new to us. It was actually built in the 1800s, gutted and renovated in the 90s, but that's besides the point. It's been about a month and I've started having really vivid dreams almost every night. I've put together the dreams in chronological order for simplicity's sake, so it'll sound like one big dream, but this happened over weeks. Here we go. One night after dinner, I took my daughter to play at the park a few blocks from our house. It was later in the evening, so there weren't any other kids around, but she still had the best time. The sun was starting to set and I let her know it was time to go. Pleading with me, she gives me the biggest puppy dog eyes. How can I resist those piercing green eyes? 5 more minutes, I say, being as serious as I could. Sitting on the bench, looking along the tree line, that's the first time she caught my attention. A little old lady just standing there, along the trees. She had to be in her 90s, about 5'2". She had a dirty white gown on and went down just past her knees. Her long, bony arms draped at her sides, stringy white hair hanging in front of her unfixed gaze, unblinking, just standing there, watching. After grabbing my daughter and insisting it was time to go, after pulling out of the parking lot, I couldn't fight the urge to look back. I had to know, so I glanced in the rear view mirror, and there she was, still standing in the same spot. She hadn't moved a muscle. Fast forward 1 week, I still can't get her out of my head. Who is she? What was she doing? I find myself losing track of time thinking about these things. Sitting at my desk, staring out the window, almost the same way she had stared at me. Then all of a sudden, there she was again. This time on a busy sidewalk outside of my work, much closer this time, people just bypassing her as if she wasn't even there. She stood there like a statue watching me, but this time was different. There was something not quite right about her face. I can't quite put my finger on it. Her lips were pursed and quivering like she was trying to say something. My eyes were glued, seconds turning to minutes, minutes turning to who knows how long. Then all of a sudden a hand lands firmly on my back, startling me enough to finally allow me to break away from the hold that her gaze had on me. "Ready for our meeting?" my boss says. "Yeah, of course," I replied, stumbling over my words. Getting back to my office after the meeting and looking for her, but she was gone. Leaning into the window frame, checking up and down both sides of the streets. Nothing. Fast forward to today. It's been 3 weeks since my eyes locked with hers. I still have so many questions I'll probably never have the answers to, but the one thing that I do know about her is there's something familiar about those eyes. I know those eyes. They didn't quite match the rest of her face. They popped, such a vibrant green, but the rest of her was so pale and muted. Whatever, I sigh, trying to push the thought of her from my mind. I'm just glad it's over. Or so I thought. I'm in my living room folding laundry that I've neglected for longer than I'd like to admit. What? Don't judge me. All of a sudden I hear my phone chime to life from the kitchen counter. No big deal, right? But then it happened again, and again, and again. Over and over for a solid 5 minutes. Finally, I had had enough. I went to the kitchen to see what the notifications were. I thought maybe the new selfie I posted on Instagram was popping off. I jokingly smirked as I picked up my phone. My screen was littered with notifications. Motion detected at the back door. I felt the color draining from my face. Deep down I knew what I was about to see before I even opened the app, and sure enough, there she was. My heart began to pound. My arms felt like weights. My phone slipped from my hand, snapping me from the daze as it crashed to the ground. Enough, I thought, sprinting to the back door. More questions racing through my mind. Who is this lady? How did she find my house? Why me? Standing at the back door, knowing it was the only thing that separated me from her, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I lifted the blind. She's even closer now. Her breath was fogging up the glass. "Who are you?" I screamed. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" Almost pleading with her. Her mouth slowly opens, mouthing back the words that I had just said to her. She's mocking me, wheezing from the other side of the glass, but not actually saying a word. "Who are you?" I screamed again, this time slamming my fist against the door. Nothing. She just stood there smiling at me, still wheezing and gurgling, as our eyes remained locked to one another. When all of a sudden from behind me I hear the door swing open. "Daddy." Oh no, Sybil, I thought. I frantically closed the blind, spun around, pressing my back to the door and sliding down to the floor. "Sibby," I yelled as she ran to greet me, falling into my arms. "Look what Mommy got for me," she screams, holding up the necklace so proudly. A little gold heart with pink stones around it with an S in the middle. "Look, Daddy, do you like it?" "It's beautiful," I cheered as my eyes lit up to match her excitement. She giggled and ran back into the living room to play, my wife passing her through the doorway. "Why are you sitting on the floor?" she asked. The tone shifted and got much more serious now. I sighed as I got up off the floor, picking up my phone. "We need to talk." I sat her down at the kitchen table, explained everything. Naturally, she didn't believe me, but I had proof. Unlocking my phone to show her the video of the backdoor camera, I hit play and slid it across the table to her. "What?" she replied. What do you mean, what?" I said. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "Look at her," with desperation in my voice. "Very funny," she muttered, getting up from the table. I was dumbfounded. You can't see her?" I stuttered. "I don't see anything, and this isn't funny anymore. Cut it out. I'm not joking. You have to believe me," I told her, which clearly she did not. She stormed out of the kitchen, grabbed Sibby by the hand, and said we're going to Grammy's for the night. I sat at that table for hours, replaying every possible scenario in my head. Is she real? Am I crazy? No, she has to be real. It feels real. Defeated, I went to lay down, my mind still racing. I lay there staring at the ceiling for hours until I eventually dozed off. A few hours later, I wake up, rubbing my eyes. I check my watch. 3:33 a.m., rubbing my eyes again and stretching. Then I hear it, wheezing and gurgling from behind me. I roll over, and there's a silhouette in the doorway. Her silhouette. No, this can't be happening. I must still be asleep, I thought. She's slowly inching towards me, her feet gliding over the hardwood floor. It's like she's not even lifting her feet. The gurgles and wheezing getting louder and louder. My fight or flight is kicking in and I'm choosing the latter, but I can't move. I'm frozen. She's getting closer and closer. No longer a silhouette. I can clearly see her now, feeling like my heart is about to explode. I try to scream, and nothing. She's directly beside my bed now. I close my eyes as tight as I possibly could, screaming inside, begging myself to move, to run, to do anything. I feel the bed sink in on either side of me, her weight slowly moving up my body, still clenching my eyes as tight as I possibly could while I screamed and prayed for anyone to come, even though I knew there was no help coming for me. Feeling the warmth of her breath on my face, along with something else, something swinging back and forth, grazing my face each time it passed by. It's cold and hard. I open my eyes, a necklace with a gold heart, pink stones, and an S in the center. The same necklace. Our eyes lock, those piercing green eyes. Finally, she speaks to me. In a low, gravelly growl, she mutters, "Time to go, Daddy." A sense of calmness washes over me. How can I resist those eyes? First off, I'd like to mention that these are all experiences I had many years ago, and they were all in dreams, so there's a large chance that not all I remember is completely true, but this is how I remember them happening. These dreams started when I was 6 years old. I'm 14 now for reference, and they were normally short, strange scenes of me waking up in my room, and some gruesome monstrous creature, always looking different at the beginning, would either scream, roar, or just completely attack me, and I'd wake up in a cold sweat. As I got older, the dreams got longer, diving more in depth into the story. The first change I remember is sometimes I'd see it get to me, and I'd wake up with a weird pain in my chest. Other times, however, I'd escape it, and before anything else would happen, I'd wake up. Every month or so, this went on, and the dreams would get longer, and this creature would always get more gruesome and more scary. One time, I ended up escaping the monster, and I would make it to my basement for safety. After this dream occurred for the first time, it would always be me running to the basement for safety. I would run to the laundry room. My sister would be there, and my mom would lock the door with me and my sister inside, but the door wasn't able to hold it. I remember seeing these bloodied claws ripping through the thick wooden doors, and my mom flipping out, sending me and my sister to hide. After we hid, there'd be a loud scream followed by silence. Every once in a while, it would find me, and each time this dream occurred, it was like the creature was learning, getting smarter, and understanding how I thought, because it would occur more and more often. The gruesome creature would sometimes eat my sister in front of me, only to force me to wake up after. And other times it would torture me, only letting me wake up after it seemed satisfied. These dreams occurred through a 3-year period, happening about one time a week, maybe two, or maybe down to one time a month at some points. The last time I ever had a dream like this, it was the exact same thing, except for this time, when it came to take either me or my sister, I stood up to it. I remember its beady red eyes glaring at me, and its smile with sharp bloody teeth, as if it was enjoying this. It was about 7 feet tall and had razor-sharp claws, and its body was fat and covered in a matted brown fur. The creature laughed at me, and to this day it is still one of the most sinister things I think I've ever heard. I had terrible anger issues back then, and I could feel the rage inside of me building. I looked it dead in the eyes and screamed at it to go away, and then I woke up. These dreams never occurred again. The next strange experience was when I was a bit older, maybe 10 or 11. I woke up from a normal sleep, but I didn't feel awake. I think it might have been sleep paralysis, but I'm not sure because I've never experienced this. I felt a cold tap on my hand, and I had a shiver roll down my spine. Wanting to see what tapped my finger, I rolled my head over. I saw an 8-foot-tall shadow crouched over me, with long fingers extending. I tried to scream and move, but I couldn't make a noise. I shut my eyes and held them so tight. I didn't open them until morning. I might have fallen asleep somewhere in between there, but that's where that part ends. The last experience I had, I was 12. I fell asleep like any ordinary night, but then my dream started. I think it was an out-of-body experience, but I'm not too sure. I've never had one before. I was standing in my room, but I saw myself in my bed, sleeping. Confused and looking around my room, there were weird looming shadows everywhere, and when I looked back at my body, something was lifting me up. I don't completely remember what it was, but I do remember seeing it carry me over its shoulder into the living room. I followed it. I saw it throw my body onto the couch, and that's when I moved towards myself, only to wake up in the exact spot I had seen myself in my dream. I have no clue how I got there, what happened during this dream, but these are 3 of the scariest things I've ever had happen to me.